today's World Insight with Tian Wei, Chinese President Xi Jinping proposes a China solution of cooperation to Arab countries. Will that turn the fortunes of the troubled Arab region around? Boris Johnson quits as a British Foreign Secretary. Will high-profile resignations in the British cabinet derail Brexit negotiations? And our exclusive interview with Egyptian Foreign Minister. What does it take for one of the largest Arab nations to emerge from its turbulence?
Consistency and dedication to
Hello and welcome to World Insight with me, Tian Wei, coming to you live on CGTN. We begin our program today in Beijing, where the 8th Ministerial Meeting of China-Arab States Cooperation Forum is being held. The most important thing about this forum is what's going to be the future like for the China-Arab nation relations. The forum was established 14 years ago. Since then, both the Chinese and the Arab sides have been increasing economic and trade cooperation. Before we get down to business, take a look at this.
Two civilizations bound together by the Silk Road. This year's meeting will feature comprehensive and in-depth discussions on consolidating the traditional friendship between China and the Arab countries and advancing the China Proposed Belt and Road Initiative. Chinese President Xi Jinping announced that China and Arab countries had agreed to establish a future-oriented strategic partnership of comprehensive cooperation and common developments at the opening ceremony. 4 years ago, during the 6th ministerial meeting, President Xi invited Arab states to join the Belt and Road Initiative. And this time, progress is visible, as Arab states have embraced the construction of the Belt and Road.
Geographically centered in the roots of the Belt and Road Initiative, Arab countries are the natural partners in building the initiative along with China. China's Arab policy paper marks that the initiative has become a major part of the China-Arab relationships. At a ministerial meeting, China and Arab countries will sign a joint declaration for action between China and Arab states on building the Belt and Road Initiative.
In President Xi's new proposals, he said China would be involved in land and sea connectivity projects, clean energy infrastructure, and a bank union to fund industrial parks throughout the Arab world. China and the Arab League formally launched the China-Arab Cooperation Forum in 2004, aiming to promote long-term relations in economy, trade, culture, and technology while advancing peace and development. China has become the second largest trading partner of the Arab states. At the same time, the Arab states are China's largest crude oil suppliers. The energy sector is a key component of China-Arab strategic cooperation. Medical cooperation and people-to-people exchanges are also pivotal to China-Arab friendship.
For more discussion on the relations between China and the Arab countries, we are joined in Beijing by Mr. Li Guofu, who is the Director of the Center for Middle Eastern Studies in China Institute of International Studies. Also joining us, we have Mohammed El-Sudari, who is a researcher at the King Faisal Center for Research and Islamic Studies coming from Saudi Arabia. I want to welcome both of you, gentlemen. Let me begin by asking you, Mr. Li, very briefly, help us to understand, what does it mean this time? It seems that this is a grand-scale interaction between Chinese and the Arab countries. This is going to be a new starting point of the relations?
Yes, of course, as President Xi Jinping mentioned during his speech, and because of China and the Arab nations jointly, we have formed what we call the strategic partnership for the comprehensive cooperation and common development. And so, both sides' relations will start from this very high level. And also, I think that during the President Xi's speech, and China offered some, new proposals of both sides cooperation in the next 2 or 3 years,
right.
and also offer the Chinese solution to the current, Middle East problems.
Mr. Al-Sadari, coming from the Arab countries' perspective, even though there are a lot of different perspectives among the Arab countries on different issues, may I ask you about whether China will be able to, or the China-Arab country relations will be able to address some of the key challenges countries in the Arab region are facing?
Well, I think one of the major key challenges that Arab states are facing writ large is really economic in nature. You have a segment of Arab states that have undergone civil wars, have had to experience years of unrest, and another segment of Arab states that are trying to pursue reforms in the political economic arena. They want to create sustainable futures for their populations. So in that area, I think Sino-Arab cooperation can really offer many solutions and certainly can help these Arab states to restore stability and to attain the development that they would like to pursue. In the political arena, however, I think there is still a great need for investing in political trust, in developing the connections that would really enable China to play that role that we in the Arab region would aspire to play down the line.
Mr. Al-Sadari, if I could just be frank with you, Arab countries are not lack of cash or fund. If you look at the history of many of the Arab countries which are oil rich, actually it is not the problem. It's about whether the fund coming from one country is likely to go to the other countries that are facing problems right now. So how would China's role be in a region in which there are quite some differences among neighbors in the Arab region? Can you help us to understand better about that?
Well, I think at the end of the day, yes, there are going to be fundamental differences in the region on political issues, on existential issues, and so forth. But I think, in terms of the wide array, or at least in terms of the larger number of Arab countries, there is a desire to obtain development, and they would like to pursue cooperation down the line. And I think that would build on the momentum of the fact that the region had undergone many years of upheavals as a result of the Arab Spring. So there is also, I would say, a popular and also elite exhaustion with the situation on the ground, which I think is one of the reasons that is leading many Arab states to really want to reorient east once more and are really eager to cooperate with China as a result.
Mr. Li, of course this is happening with a big backdrop. For the Arab countries, the Arab Spring so-called, in the early years, there's likely to be very different results in different countries. Secondly, you've got the Arab countries trying to struggle with the challenges of the future of the oil industry, because energy now are coming from so many different formats and possibilities and sources, and therefore the significance of Arab countries is likely to be examined with a new light. Thirdly, you also see the United States relations with some of the key Arab countries have been sometimes getting warmer, and with the others not necessarily so, particularly on the Palestinian-Israeli issue. So, Mr. Li, at this point, what can be the political fruit for both sides, China and the Arab countries? Remember, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi said earlier that China and the Arab countries should respect each other's core interests. Well, that has a lot to do with politics, isn't it?
I think the core interests of the China as well as the Arab countries, it depends on from what kind of angles. As our Saudi friends say that one of the key challenges, or we say one of the key problems the Arab countries in general they have is the economic problems, especially how the governments, in order to maintain a kind of stabilities, they need to improve the people's living standards, and also to raise a kind of a level of the industries. And though we may assume that the Arab countries they have the money, they have the funds, but I would say that the majority of the Arab countries they do relatively poor in various areas. Even, for example, the Saudi Arabia, they may be rich in the oil resources. They may have, amount of the monies and also, various, sources. But, as far as the level of industries is concerned, I think even the country like Saudi Arabia is
so it's about looking
low.
for the new path of development and new opportunities as well for both sides. Talking about cooperation between China and the Arab states, it has been booming over the recent years under the Belt and Road Initiative. Take a look at some of the numbers. Since 2014, 9 Arab states have signed agreements with China to join the building of the Belt and Road Initiative. In 2016, 7 Arab states become founding members of the China-initiated AIIB, Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. China has become the second largest trading partner of the Arab states. Bilateral trade volume rose from $36 billion in 2004 to over $190 billion in the year 2017. More importantly, imports and exports are largely balanced between China and the Arab countries. And more numbers to share with you, Mr. El-Soudari, if I can. We are hearing from the speech from Chinese President Xi Jinping today. He's talking about China is providing 100 million yuan to support the Palestinians. He's talking about $20 billion loans to the Arab countries for economic development. He's also talking about 8 trillion China imports over the next 5 years, in which there could be a huge chunk that are coming from the Arab countries. Meanwhile, he's also talking about $750 billion outbound investment from China over the next few years, and it could go to the Arab countries as well. But will Arab countries be competitive, though, in China's both import initiatives and also outbound investment?
I think, yes, this competition is bound to happen, and it's going to lead, unfortunately, to a lot of waste and also a lot of mistakes and mishaps on the ground. I mean, if we look at the Gulf region, for instance, we have multiple infrastructural projects that are being developed in very close proximity to one another. If we look at the UAE with Abu Dhabi, for instance, Doha, Kuwait, there are other projects going on there, as well as Oman and the Duqm Industrial Zone, or even in Jazan in southern Saudi Arabia. And this has raised a lot of issues and debates about, well, given all this development that is taking place, how can these areas become viable and can actually compete in the international arena when they're competing for a very small pie? So these are issues that are going to be raised. And obviously, if we look at the Belt Road Initiative, it's a negotiated and open process, and there are going to be mistakes and mishaps on the ground. And ultimately, I think the markets are going to decide what are the projects that are going to be sustainable and viable. So this competition, in fact, might be a very good thing. We shouldn't really interpret it in very black and white terms.
I see. Well, we're talking about Belt and Road Initiative. I also want to invite another expert coming from China on the phone, Zhang Jianping, Director General of the China Center for Regional Cooperation in the Chinese Academy of International Trade and Economic Cooperation. Mr. Zhang has been doing research about the BRI for quite some time. Mr. Zhang, the potential of the Arab states in the BRI, what about their significance? Even though they were important countries in the ancient Silk Road, but how relevant are they besides energy in today's what China is talking about, the BRI?
Yeah, actually, in the history, actually China's both Silk Road and inland and maritime Silk Road, that one of the destinations that is Arab countries. Meanwhile, today, by so advanced modern, transportation system, of course, Arab countries still the very important partners for China's Belt and Road Initiative. Especially this initiative provided a more comprehensive and systematic cooperation platform and development platform.
Give me some example, Mr. Zhang, if you can. What are some of the projects you think that would really cater to the competitive edge of both sides, China and the Arab countries, that is really likely to function as good examples for the BRI?
Yeah,
Give me
I'd
some
like
examples.
to give you a comprehensive example. That is, for example, in Arab countries, they lack of enough infrastructure and lack of human resources, lack of capital. And the Chinese side can provide all of them. You may find that recently infrastructure improvement and there's so lot of architecture actually built by Chinese. On the other hand, if you look at, e-commerce right now has a rapid development in Saudi Arabia and other, Arab countries, and those consumers can enjoy Chinese food and they import a lot of Chinese goods. Meanwhile, Chinese side can import oil and gas. And also, if you look at even it's for energy sectors, for example, Sinopec expanded their, downstream, refinery plants in Saudi Arabia. And that means that, even if in oil and gas, these sectors, production chains expanded step by step.
All right, Jiang Jianping with us. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us on the phone. I want to come back to you, to Mr. El-Soudari, if I can, sir. The issue about BRI, one of the most important one is, people have to understand it is not just about China provide the money, China provide the people, China provide the investment. It's about an initiative proposed originally by China, but going to be joined by partners around the world if they see there's going to be a win-win situation. If they see there's going to be long-term gain for them as well as a participant. So as a result of that, what Mr. Zhang said is perfectly beautiful because China has been contributing money, people, and building. But what about the attributions coming from the Arab countries that would make you also have a win-win result under the BRI initiative?
Well, I think in addition to these material offerings, right, investment, development assistance, even in terms of just providing know-how and knowledge on governance practices. I mean, you are having tens of thousands of Arab officials training in China under the rubric of the initiative. But I think more importantly, if we look, for example, at President Xi's speech, and we see this theme actually reiterated in all the 3 speeches that he has given over the last 6 years directed at the Arab world, is a narrative that is very appealing to many Arab officials as well as the Arab publics at large, which is, this idea of a mutual Fuxing Zhimeng, a sort of, rejuvenation dream that is not just Chinese, but it's also an Arab one. And in many ways, I think for a lot of Arabs nowadays, this idea of a Zhongguo Fang'an, a type of China way or a China model, is very interesting. And this actually is one of the major drivers for the BRI because it gives them an ideational understanding of the path they want to go to in the future.
I see. Mr. Li, before we go, I also want to invite your final words on this as well. In the long term, what is likely to bring China and the Arab countries together? Remember, Arab countries have very different views on some of the issues among themselves. So how is China going to really balance well among these key strategic issues?
China tried to offer a kind of solutions, and we believe, by the end of the day, could solve all or relatively largely, the major issues or conflicts in the Middle East. Because we strongly believe, peaceful dialogue and peaceful developments would be the key for all the solutions to the problems. And if every country, and especially the Arab countries, they can adapt this kind of the methods, and largely most, I would say, not all the problems could be solved through dialogue and mutual development.
All right. Li Guofu, Mohammed El-Soudari. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us. All the best. Thank you.
Thank you.
And you are watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei. Our program comes to you live on CGTN. Stay with us. We'll be back right after this. You're watching World Insight. Next, we turn to Britain, where British Prime Minister Theresa May has named a new Foreign Secretary as backlash builds over Brexit. Jeremy Hunt takes over the role hours after Boris Johnson resigned. Johnson is one of the 3 high-profile officials who opted to step down rather than accept the Prime Minister's plan for leaving the European Union. Take a look.
Out he goes. Boris Johnson, Britain's outspoken Foreign Secretary, departing with a withering last shout. The UK's Brexit plan, agreed only last Friday, would give Britain the status of a colony, he said. The Brexit dream dying, suffocated by needless doubt. In a noisy UK Parliament and 2 senior cabinet ministers down, Prime Minister Theresa May stuck to her controversial plan.
In the 2 years since the referendum, we have had a spirited national debate with robust views echoing around the cabinet table as they have on breakfast tables up and down the country. Mr. Speaker, this is the right Brexit, leaving the European Union on the 29th of March 2019.
The first minister to go was David Davis, the point man in Brussels, claiming May's plan means sticking to EU rules and regulations too closely.
Not equivalent, not similar, but the same. And that will provide all sorts of problems when it comes to, if we want to diverge, do something different. So the return of control to Parliament is more illusory than it is real.
But it was Boris Johnson's departure which has triggered full-on talk of a leadership challenge. Boris Johnson, the face of Brexit during the referendum campaign 2 years ago, credited with winning the campaign for leave. In the British Parliament, many unhappy with May's new Chequers plan, agreed last Friday, leaving her vulnerable. Opposition leaders in Parliament say these resignations have created chaos.
Well, further discussion about Brexit and the resignations of high-level officials in the administration, we are joined by Ian Beck, Professor of the European Institute and co-director of the Rendorf Forum of the London School of Economics and Political Science. Professor Beck, good to have you. One after another, and then another resignation coming from high-level officials in the administration. Are we going to see further of those developments down the line?
I think what we'll see is the government coming under huge pressure because those in the cabinet, the government who believe in Brexit very strongly are going to be asked repeatedly the same question. If Boris is gone and David is gone, why are you still there if you believe the same things as they did? And you'll also see pressure coming from individual members of the Conservative Party in Parliament, many of whom are very hostile to the European Union and who will therefore want to put pressure on the Prime Minister to back down on the proposal she agreed to last week. Now, if you look at it, what really happened last week was the government was forced at last to make decisions. There's an expression that's been used in many of the things that have been going on in Europe in recent years of kicking the can down the road.
Right.
In other words, not making a decision. The can of Brexit has been kicked down the road and it's finally reached the wall where it can no longer be kicked and decisions have to be taken.
It really depends on what kinds of wall that is both the size, different size is likely to build. Having said that, though, the Prime Minister called it a spirited debate in the country, but actually people see it very bitter debate inside the country. But where is it going? We see one plan after another being scrapped off as a result of lack of confidence from all. Then what can be the next mechanism in coming up with the right plan?
Well, the decision seems to be to go for what's been labelled soft Brexit, which is staying much closer to the European Union than many in the Conservative Party will be comfortable with. Soft Brexit means not having the decisive break, which would take Britain out of the European Union very comprehensively and give it the liberty to do trade deals with other parts of the world, such as China. This is what the pro-Brexit people reject. So I think we're going to see a very, very difficult debate over the next few days about whether this decision is one that the Conservative Party in particular can live with, and thus whether it's going to be the position that Britain is able to keep presenting to Brussels.
Not only the vulnerability of the high-level cabinet members, but also Theresa May herself. Her credibility is pretty much on the line. On the one hand, inside the country, on the other hand, in her interaction with the EU, nobody expects her to be serving very long terms because of the controversy it involves in the Brexit. But how do you think, Professor Beck, is she doing right now politically? Will people still have confidence in her?
Well, there's a paradox at the heart of this, because what she's shown over the last few days has been, at last, leadership in saying, this is the way we and the country are going to go. If you don't like it, you, Boris Johnson, you, David Davis, then you resign, because I have made the decision and I demand that the cabinet follow me. So it's strong leadership, but it's also taking a big risk, because if she then faces a backlash from not just the people inside their own cabinet, but from public opinion and from other members of parliament, she is exposing herself to a challenge to her leadership. Now, so far, that hasn't happened. But just watch this space over the next 48 hours. And there's also the European level to consider.
A lot of drama, a series of drama over there, but also internationally see even more dramas with the current Trump administration doing things like it is. Does that put the Britain, rather the British people, shall I say, with some second thought about what kind of road do they want to choose? Will they want to keep the can down the road, maybe postpone some of the important decisions, or actually stick to what their original thoughts were? 52% voted for Brexit.
Well, things are moving very rapidly, so it's quite hard to make a guess as to what would happen over the next few days. But the academic research and the opinion poll research suggests that those who wanted Brexit still want Brexit, and those who wanted to remain still want remain. And if anything, what public opinion is saying to the politicians is, get on with it, complete this process, because we've decided long ago, you the politicians have delayed it. Now, there is another angle to this, which is, if the European Union response to Theresa May is not sufficiently positive and says we demand still more concessions, that's going to open a whole new debate which will be very difficult. Now here I think what's likely to happen is that the European Union would far prefer to deal with Theresa May than with any of the alternatives, be it inside her own party or the alternative government, the Labour government potentially led by Jeremy Corbyn. So they too face a dilemma. How do we deal with this new context in Britain?
Right. We are watching it almost hour by hour, some of the latest development over there about Brexit. Thank you so much, Ian Beck. Really appreciate it. You're watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei. Still to come on our program. We speak exclusively to the Egyptian foreign minister to find out how the Belt and Road Initiative can boost the Egyptian economy in place of dwindling Western investment. Welcome back. You're still watching World Insight. The program comes to you Monday to Friday on CGTN. As a regional power in the Arab League, Egypt's economy is one of the largest and most diversified in the Middle East. However, the economy suffered from a severe downturn following the 2011 revolution. The government faces numerous challenges to restore growth and investor confidence. Concerns of social unrest also hurt its tourism industry. The country is now responding positively to the Belt and Road Initiative. Dozens of joint projects have been established in various sectors, from transport and industry to energy and infrastructure. Cooperations under the BRI will bring more opportunities, some say, to the nation's recovery. On the sidelines of the China-Arab States Cooperation Forum, I sat down with the Egyptian foreign minister. He told us how his country is struggling to achieve its economic goals. Mr. Minister, your country is trying to revive the economy, and you have been doing quite a number of issues in order to get it done. For example, about taxes, for example, attracting foreign investment, for example, about trying to export as much as possible. But so far, there seems to be still a gap between reality and the vision. What can get your mission accomplished?
Consistency and dedication to the economic reform that has been initiated over the last 4 years, and the recognition of the public of the importance of this program and its inevitability. That consistency is starting to pay off, and we are hopeful that it will continue to eliminate the distortions in the economy and regain our ability to greater levels of production.
Reform is very difficult because it's going to move somebody's cheese. Well, at the same time, the immediate well-off is not necessarily going to be in the picture. And yet, for a new administration, you have to function and give people some good answers. So I guess that's quite a dilemma. From the foreign minister's perspective, how do you see your country's relations with the others would help you to get this done?
It's a shrinking world and an interdependent world, and of course we rely on the help of our partners to continue to encourage the levels of cooperation so that they can work into our reform policies and increase the level of our ability to meet the aspirations of our people. Any reform has a cost that is borne by the current generation, but it is always in recognition of the benefits in the medium and long term, and thereby it is the confidence that the general population has in its leadership that sustains the program.
Mr. Minister, you are very skillful in terms of Washington politics. You served as the Egyptian ambassador to Washington starting from the year 2008. You know not only how Washington works, but also how so-called international system works. So at this point, what do you think for your country is the most important things to do? Of course, you talk about the economic growth. That's going to guarantee the stability and the confidence others have about you. But internationally, how do you win more confidence from the others?
I think we've achieved a great deal of confidence and reliability since 2013, when the revolution of the 30th, Egyptians regained their future and set forth a roadmap. And then, having completed the political roadmap with the presidential and legislative and constitutional referendum, and during these last 4 years of stability and consistency, I think we have attracted once again many of our partners to the importance of collaboration and cooperation between Egypt and our traditional partners, both in the United States and Western Europe, as well as our traditional partners, among them China, to continue to try to gain stability and security to our region, and also participate in terms of international peace and security.
Sinai, for example, is a big issue for you. And people talk about stability of Egypt. Immediately that word popped up. So what is the framework you are looking at, Mr. Minister, in order to deal with that problem right now?
Well, it is the issues of terrorism in the Sinai are limited to a very small portion of the Sinai. This is in the northeast of Sinai. This is an issue which is being dealt with solely in terms of the capacities of the Egyptian armed forces and police forces, and we are confident of their ability and capability. But on the other hand, to do so effectively, we still rely on the cooperation of our international partners and the provision of the equipment that is needed, surveillance and explosive detecting equipment, and also military hardware, and the political support for the ongoing operation. So these are two different things.
But will that make you relying on the others?
It's not a matter of reliance, because if we started with referring to the global system that is shrinking and is mutually reliant, then no country is immune from enhancing its abilities through cooperation and through relationships with others. No country is an island in itself that can support all areas of its activity without the collaboration with its partners.
Security issue has always been important, even if when it comes to developing your economy, Mr. Minister. Tourism, for example, it's a sector that Egypt embraces, but at the same time, tourists around the world want to have a safer place to travel to. They want to have fun. What can Egypt do in order to gain this confidence coming from the tourists?
I think what needs to be done is for media outlets like yourself to project and to report factually on the situation.
They haven't?
In Egypt. No, not necessarily. If you look closer into statistics, our tourist destinations have not been subject to any terrorist activity over the last 25 years. There has been no effective terrorist activity because of the efforts that we make to secure these areas. But unfortunately, the operation in that limited area of the Sinai and the turbulence in Libya and in Iraq and in Syria and the constant expose of the media related to all of these issues tends to give a perception that is not fully factual.
But as you may know, people travel there, they want to have a 100% safety guarantee.
I don't think you can have a 100% safety guarantee anywhere in the world. I think that can be demonstrated by occurrences in France and in Nice and in Brussels and in the United States and other areas.
So you are saying, Mr. Minister, people are going to have very safe travels when they're going to your country?
Yes, we can guarantee 100% effort to provide that security, and I think we've been successful to a large degree since there haven't been any terrorist activity, thank God, in any of those tourist areas.
Mr. Minister, not only about the economy, your country is also on a reviving trend when it comes to your influence in the Arab world, your influence and impact in the African continent. But the question is, to what speed, in what nature? Do you see that has been changing over the years?
There's a refound importance that we attach to our relationships to our Arab and African brethren. I think that with our ability to regain a degree of economic prosperity and expanding the industrial base in Egypt, we will be more in a position to also assist our brethren in their developmental objectives.
What do you think are the things that's on the priority list when you have a chance to do that?
The issues of the infrastructure and increasing the interconnectivity between African states is a very important element.
For example, Suez Canal and some of the other important bridges, in a way, that you are linking different continents. That really led us to the issue of Belt and Road Initiative. That is based on a vision of connectivity. To what extent, on what projects, do you think Egypt can concretely work with your partners, including China?
There's already very ambitious projects to support the initiative of Belt and Road, and Egypt's geographic location as a pillar between the East and the West, the presence of the Suez Canal, the various port facilities on the Red Sea, and the cooperation with China in developing these facilities is a main contributor to the implementation of the initiative.
Talking about connectivity, implementations, once again, takes time. And once again, there are issues like stability, issues like where the financing would come from, and the efficiency of implementation as well. So, Mr. Minister, how do you look at all of these important issues related to a vision?
Again, it is through international cooperation, and it is through collaboration where a win-win situation is the overriding prerequisite that we can further these goals and these aspirations. But the time depends on the quality of implementation and on the consistency of the vision that is guiding the implementation.
But as you may know, there are a lot of different understandings, and shall I say even misunderstandings, about this Belt and Road Initiative, not coming necessarily from developing countries and emerging economies, but coming from the others. And that, in a way, have hindered certain determination to get it done or get it done on time.
Well, they might be generated by the predominant competitive nature in the past of how countries view their varying interests. And I believe that with greater mutual desire that we do work on the basis of a win-win, and that there is room for achieving a equitable share in terms of economic development, that we can relieve the apprehensions and the misconceptions.
That is our exclusive interview with the Egyptian Foreign Minister, talking about China-Egypt relations and also some of the important international and regional questions. That is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, try to find us World Insight CGTN into your search engine, or check out our YouTube channel. You can also follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Sina Weibo. From me, Tian Wei, and everyone on the World Insight team, thanks for watching, and tune in again next time for insights across China and around the world. Good night.